Welcome back to Daily Dose of Hebrew. These are the weekend editions, and we're glad to have you with us today. We're going to work on the accent marks today in 1 Samuel 3:8. And for those of you just joining us on the weekend editions, we've been working through Samuel's call narrative, paying specific attention to the accent marks. So before we dive in today, let's read the Hebrew together, and then we'll get an overall translation again. So let's read this together. Vayosef Adonai kero Shemuel bashelishit Vayakom vayelech el Eli Vayomer hinani ki karatali Vayaven Eli ki Adonai koreh lanar. So now we have the reading. Let's look at a translation here quickly, and we'll work through this. And the Lord, where we might say, and then the Lord, picking up the Vav consecutive there, and then the Lord added a calling of Samuel a third time, or as the third. Here we would just get, and the Lord called Samuel a third time, would be the smooth English translation. And we keep going. And so he arose and he went to Eli. That's Samuel's movement. And now we get Samuel's direct speech. And he said, "Here I am," or "Here am I, behold me." We've looked at this a few times. "Why did you come? Behold me, for you called to me." And then Eli understood that the Lord was calling to the young boy. And so there's our translation, and now that we have that overall translation, let's begin to mark the major breaks using the accents. First, we have the athnach here. Now remember that the athnach is the far subordinate of the sof pasuk, which are the two vertical diamonds at the end, and it has some room to move around in the verse. So hence the athnach is usually the first accent that I look for in order to give me the major break of the verse. And with this break now in place, let's look at just the athnach segment of the verse. So now with just the athnach segment, we want to divide at the near subordinate, which in this case is the tifcha, and we want to divide at the far subordinate disjunctive accent, which is the zakef katon here. Now remember, the zakef occurs, the tifka occurs one or two words in front of the athnach. Here it's just the word in front, and so its placement is limited. So while it certainly is a disjunctive accent, here marking off the verbal element karata from the object li, it's not quite as, what we may say, weighty as the zakef that can move around within the athnach segment. So let's draw some lines here, though, to mark off these segments. Now, since this verse is longer, we get some additional zakef katons. One is here, and the other is actually disguised by the revia. Now, the revia can substitute for the first zakef if there are multiple zakefs, and indeed, that's what we have here. So let's now add additional lines in order to break the verse into smaller and smaller segments for the ease of translation. Let me straighten this up a bit and line up the zakef segments. So now we can see these line breaks clearly, and we can translate each segment on its own terms. We still have some lighter disjunctive accents and some conjunctive accents in here, so let's at least point out a couple of these. Here we have the zarka, separating off the direct object, a calling of Samuel, from its numeral, a third time. So again, it's not a heavy disjunct, but it is a disjunct, and we can see syntactically, semantically maybe, how it marks it off. The accent on Vayosef here may be a conjunctive asla or a disjunctive pashta. Those actually look the same in this particular case. However, in many of the verbal clauses, the verbal element is often set off from the subject with a slight disjunct. And so here I'm going to go with a pashta on this one. In the next zakef segment, we have another pashta. This time it's a doubled pashta. Look at that. So the double pashta will often occur on a word where the accent is not the final syllable. So here the pashta is a post-positive, meaning that it occurs at the end of the word, regardless of where the accented syllable falls in the word. Here the accent of the word is on the yod at the beginning, and the vav consecutive caused the accent to retract. Remember that from the final syllable in this hollow verb. Hence, the pashta will accent the second syllable, and it will mark the post-positive. Now, while we welcome email feedback and want questions, don't email me and ask me why the pashta didn't do this on Vayosef up above. Someone out there may know why it doesn't do that, and I'd love to hear that. However, I can't seem to find an answer to that at the moment, why the pashtas are different here. We get the doubled pashta on Vayakom, and we get the single pashta on Vayosef. Now, the rest of the accents are all conjunctive accents, so we'll leave those as they stand. We've translated these segments before, so we'll forego that for now, and then come back to it after we pick up the Saluk segment. So let's look at that now. In this segment, you'll notice quickly the Sof Pasuk, the doubled vertical diamonds here. Remember that the Saluk also always occurs on the word immediately preceding the Sof Pasuk, so they're kind of a tandem in that sense. Now, within this segment, we have the near subordinate Tifka again, and the remote subordinate Zakef Katon. Now, if we want to add lines to this for even smaller segments, we can do that, and then we can translate each clause or phrase independently before putting them all together. We may have something here like, and then Eli understood, break, that the Lord, small break, was calling or was a caller to the young lad. So now let's put the whole verse together again and walk through one final translation of it. So here we go, and I've left the lines in there for you. And the Lord added a calling of Samuel as the third, or a third time. Again, smooth all this out, and the Lord called Samuel a third time, and we get the break. Oftentimes you'll see here before moving on to Samuel arising and walking, you'll see a period maybe, or some other punctuation in the English that sets this off, and you can see that segolta there, which is substituting for the first zakef in the segment, is a pretty heavy stop syntactically. And we pick up the narrative then with Samuel's movement, and he arose, and he went to Eli. Break again, because we're entering the direct speech, and he said, this is what Samuel said, behold me, another break before the ground clause, for you called to me. Then we get the big break, because now we're getting ready to move into the narrative, what we may call the narrative commentary of what Eli is understanding. And then Eli understood that the Lord was calling to the young boy. So there's our translation for 1 Samuel 3:8 in conjunction with the accents. That's going to do it for today. I want to appreciate you. I do appreciate you. I want to say thanks for joining us. And until next time, shalom.